Hey Pickens View, it's Landon here. I have our devotional video for this week, and what I want to walk you through kind of a little part of what I've been going through with the youth group. So with the youth group, we've been looking at the Beatitudes. I've been preaching through those, and this next coming week we're finishing up our series, and we have one of the Beatitudes are blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God or children of God. So we're going to look at a couple things of what it looks like to be a peacemaker. So Jesus makes this incredible, really hard statement when he's washing the disciples' feet. He tells them, people will know that you're my disciples. They will know you're my disciples by this, you love one another. And that's a hard thing to do. We know that because people all the time upset us. People all the time disappoint us. And Jesus says, this is how they're going to know. This is how people are going to know you are my disciples, because you love one another. Because you love other Christians is what he's saying. And you can look across maybe disputes you have in your life right now, maybe arguments you have in your life, and you think, well, this person I'm arguing with, maybe they're not a Christian. Maybe they're not a part of the church. Well, Jesus said to love your neighbor. Or maybe you say, look, I just can't stand this person. They just get under my skin so much. I mean, I'd want nothing to do with them. Well, he said love your enemy. So our hands are kind of tied here. We are called as Christians, as believers in Jesus, to love one another and be peacemakers. This is what he calls us to. And Paul gets into this about this issue of living peaceably with people, or loving people in this way where you can live peaceably with them, in Romans chapter 12. I'm going to read 3 verses. I'm going to read Romans chapter 12, verses 16 through 18. And there's 2 things I want to pull out of these verses that can help us with being peacemakers and living peaceably amongst in our lives, even though we have many disputes and many disagreements. So Romans 12, verse 16 through 18. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Do not repay evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. And verse 18 is really where we want to pull some things out of this morning. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So there's a statement here in this verse that I want to look at pretty closely. Paul says, as far as it depends on you. So we have a tendency in our culture, in our society, in our lives, where we love pointing blame. We love deflecting things off of ourselves. We do it for ourselves. We'll say things like, oh, I didn't get this promotion because the boss doesn't like me, or this happened and it wasn't my fault, it was this other person's fault. There's always something that we want to point the blame to others. We don't want to take blame on ourselves. And Paul here is saying, look, as far as it depends on you, you have got to take some responsibility. You may be in a dispute that truly is 95% someone else and 5% you. And Paul says, as far as that depends on you, that 5% that is your fault, you got to take ownership of that. You got to realize that you are at fault in this some way. There are very few disputes. There's some, no doubt. But it is a very low percentage of disputes that is 100% one person and 0% another person, or 100% one group of people and 0% this group of people. We have to take responsibility, and that is what Paul is saying here. As far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. But also I want to look at the phrase that leans into that. He says, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you. So he's saying, if it's possible, meaning there are probably going to be times where it's not possible. So the sins that we commit against other people, the sins that other people commit against us, they carry weight. I mean, a lot of times we go through things that are really hard. Not all arguments can just be settled really quickly. Not all arguments can just be settled with an and I'm sorry or something like that. There are going to be times where there is sin that we have committed against someone that is just so bad, so disrupting that relationship that we once had, it just can't be the same. And Paul's pointing that out here. He's saying if it is possible, if there is a chance the relationship can come back together, if there is a chance to live peaceably, do it. But we know we have been hurt in ways that sometimes, even if we can forgive someone, even if we can take steps in that way, the relationship just, it's not going to be the same. There's going to be times we can't live peaceably. And the other part of this, of if it is possible, is there's going to be times where, even if you own your part, even if you take responsibility for what you have done wrong, you ask for forgiveness, you say, look, I did this wrong, will you forgive me? There are going to be times where whoever the other person is, whatever the other person's fault was, they're not going to want to take any ownership of it. They're not going to want anything to do with you. They're not going to want to forgive. They're not going to want to try to reconcile the relationship. But that's not what Paul's saying. He's saying you take ownership of your part, and there's still going to be times where the relationship's probably not mended. So these are two things that we have to remember. These are two things that we have to keep in our minds when we're going through relational arguments, relational disputes, relational hardships, where we are called to love others. We are called to be peacemakers. We are called to, if at all possible, to live peaceably with other people. And we do that by taking ownership. Though it is difficult, though sometimes we don't have to take much ownership. Sometimes we got to take a lot of ownership. Sometimes we got to take like 80% of the blame for an argument. But sometimes it's just a little bit. But still, we have to be faithful in that and not take ownership in a way that is just wanting to get the other person to apologize. Not saying like, oh yeah, I'm sorry for doing this. Is there anything you want to say to me? That's not the right way of doing it. That's an arrogant way of doing it. That's only serving yourselves, and that's not properly loving other people. But there are times where we just have to say, look, I did this wrong. I'm making these steps to live peaceably. I am making these steps to be a peacemaker. And sometimes that'll work out, and sometimes things are just too tough. Sometimes someone's just not going to want to forgive you. But this is what we are called to do as Christians. This is how we love one another. This is how we love people outside of the church, inside of the church, and anyone in our lives. This is how we serve the Lord in doing this, because Jesus says the peacemakers will be called children of God, because God is a peaceable God. So if we try to make peace with others, we are reflecting His image and we are serving Him, and we will be called children of God.